The Nambala market was a dance of colors, smells, and sounds. Palm oil vendors chanted prices. Fisherwomen argued with drummers. Cloth sellers swirled their wrappers in the air like flags of rebellion. Ebele had walked through these stalls her entire life, always with her basket pressed to her waist and her eyes lowered in humility. But today, something was different. She saw her, a girl unlike the others, standing at the edge of the pepper stall, biting into roasted plantain like she owned the whole world. Her eyes were coal-lined, her sandals sparkled like rainstones, and her smile, casual, wicked, confident, struck Ebele like thunder. She was Insia. No one knew where Insia had come from exactly. Some said she was the niece of Madame Nyong, who ran the beer parlor. Others whispered she had escaped the city, sent away by a family scandal. Whatever the truth, she was unlike anyone Ebele had ever seen. Insia noticed her, and when their eyes locked, Ebele felt seen. Not as the priest's daughter, not as the obedient child of tradition, but as a girl. A girl who was wondering if this, all of this, the chants, the duties, the rules, was truly her life's only path. Insia winked. Ebele blinked and turned away, but the seed had been planted. That evening, as Ebele pounded yam beside her mother, she couldn't stop thinking of the way Ninsia had laughed at the old man who dropped his basket, or the daring curve of her blouse. Her mother asked her to recite the river purification chant, and Ebele stumbled, something she hadn't done in years. Her mother frowned. "Is your spirit distracted, child?" Ebele smiled weakly and shook her head. But deep within, something had shifted. Something had awakened. It began with small thoughts, then whispers, then dreams. Ebele couldn't stop imagining what it would be like to dress like Insia, to walk through the market with her chin raised high, to laugh without waiting for permission. She still fetched water, still prayed, still smiled. But inside, fire had begun to boil in her blood. Every night she lay on her mat, staring at the woven ceiling and asking questions that had no place in sacred households. Why must goodness mean silence? Why must holiness mean invisibility? And why did Insia's freedom feel like a threat, but also like a promise? Days passed. Insia kept appearing, in the market, in the paths between the village and the river, at the foot of the shrine where she never prayed. Always bold, always alone. Then one day, she came closer. Ebele had just bought okra for her mother when Insia strolled beside her. She walked like the ground belonged to her, like fear had never touched her ankles. "You're the priest's daughter, right?" she said. Ebele nodded, unsure whether to speak or flee. Insia leaned in. Her perfume was sharp, like mangoes in mischief. "You watch a lot, but you say nothing. That's dangerous." Ebele blinked. "Dangerous?" "Yes," Insia smiled. "People who keep quiet for too long explode." And then she walked away. That night, Ebele couldn't sleep. Her chest felt tight, her mind loud. Her father had asked her to prepare herbs for a sick child, and her hands trembled. She mixed the wrong bark. Obadel scolded her gently. "You must always be focused. Your spirit is a bridge, Ebele. If it breaks, others fall." She nodded, ashamed. But still, her thoughts burned. And in her dreams, Insia danced barefoot beneath the moon, calling her name. It was after the evening chants, when the stars first began to blink in the sky, that Insia came knocking. Ebele had just finished sweeping the compound when a soft click echoed near the gate. She peeked, and there she was, leaning against the wall like a spirit of the night. "Come with me," Insia whispered. Ebele froze. "To where?" "To see a different world." Ebele hesitated. "I can't. My father isn't watching. And even if he was, tonight is for you, not him." That sentence struck a forbidden chord in her chest. Her heart thundered as she tiptoed back into the hut, lied about fetching water, and slipped out. The moon watched her. Even the frogs croaked differently, like they knew something sacred was being broken. Insia led her through winding paths, past the edge of the village until they reached a compound that pulsed with music and light. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and smoke. Girls laughed on velvet cushions. Strange bottles glowed. A mirror on the wall reflected Ebele's wide, terrified eyes. Insia picked up a short red wrapper. "Try this." Ebele shook her head. I can't. You already did, the moment you followed me. With trembling hands, Ebele changed. The mirror showed a stranger. Not Ebele the healer, not Ebele the chant leader. A girl with cold darkened eyes and a red wrapper. A girl who felt powerful. Nynsia whispered in her ear, "Now you understand. You're not just your father's daughter." Ebele's lips trembled. She did understand. And that night, for the first time in her life, she danced, not in worship, not in service, but for herself. And the spirits of Nambala stirred in the wind, whispering warnings she couldn't hear. The next morning, the sun rose as always, innocent and golden. Birds chirped, pots clanged in the kitchen, and Ebele walked in like nothing had changed. But she had crossed a line, and the spirits knew it. Her mother asked why she looked tired. "I had a dream that kept me awake," Ebele said. It was the first lie, small, harmless. But lies in Nambala are like termites. They start beneath the surface, but soon they swallow the home. Ebele returned to her chores. She swept the compound, fetched palm fronds, and even helped a neighbor woman birth a goat. On the outside, she was the same. But inside, she was unraveling. She couldn't stop thinking about the way the music had throbbed in her bones, the taste of strange drinks, the way Nsia had looked at her with approval, like she was finally alive. She passed the river shrine and didn't bow. She ignored the whispers of the spirits rustling in the wind. By nightfall, she was already waiting for Nsia, and Nsia came, this time with kohl for her eyes, earrings that shimmered like fireflies, and a voice that said, "Tonight, we go to the city." Ebele should have said no. She said yes. They rode on a bike that screamed through the trees, and when they reached the city edge, Ebele gasped. Towers taller than palm trees, lights brighter than moonbeams, people everywhere, chaos, freedom, noise. Nynsia led her into a club, music louder than the gods, men with gold teeth, women with gold eyes. And Ebele, once a whisper of purity, became a scream in red silk. But in Nambala, the ancestors don't sleep. And that night, the oldest tree in the village shed a branch. A sign, a warning. The daughter of light was slipping into shadow. Back in her village room, as the cocks began to crow and the sky turned silver, Ebele stood before her mirror. Her hands trembled as she removed the red silk, wiped the kohl from her eyes, and peeled the earrings from her ears. But the reflection wouldn't change. The girl in the mirror looked bolder now, more knowing, less innocent. Ebele scrubbed her face with cold water and wrapped herself back in her white cotton. Still, the stranger remained. When Obadel called her for morning prayers, she chanted with her usual softness. But the rhythm was off. Her father looked at her puzzled, but said nothing. The spirits could feel it. So could the trees. That day, the wind blew strangely. Children cried more. And old Mama Ioma claimed she saw a spirit with a bleeding crown in her dreams. Something had shifted. That night, Ebele sat on her mat and prayed. Not to the gods her father worshipped, but to herself. To the piece of her soul that still remembered the river songs and the smell of healing herbs. "Who am I becoming?" she whispered into the night. But the mirror only stared back, silent and cold. The third time Ebele entered the city, she met him, Zuberi. He was older, sharp eyes, polished voice, clothes made of silk and pride. He sat in the corner of the club with a drink in hand, watching the crowd like a panther. Nynsia whispered in Ebele's ear, "That's Zuberi. He chooses who he wants. Tonight, he chooses you." And he did, with a nod, a slow smile, and words dipped in honey. "You're different," he said. "You don't belong in this noise." Ebele blushed. "What's your name, my flower?" "Ele," she lied. She didn't want him to know the name the gods had blessed. Zuberi sent her home with a silk scarf and a pair of sandals worth more than her father's compound. The next day, she hid them in a calabash beneath her bed. But Obadel saw the change. He smelled foreign perfume on her. He heard her voice tremble in the morning chants. He watched her spirit flicker. That evening, he spoke with her mother behind the kitchen. "Ebele is drifting." "She is becoming a woman," her mother said softly. "She is becoming something else," he replied, and deep in the shrine, the sacred tortoise refused to eat. Another sign. The bracelet came wrapped in velvet. It was gold with tiny red beads that shimmered like blood in sunlight. Zuberi had sent it with a note. For my Ele, wear it when you think of me. Ebele stared at it for hours. Her hands trembled as she traced its weight. She hid it in her wrapper folds and wore it only in secret. But that night, as she prayed at the river with her father, the bracelet fell. It rolled toward the water, gleaming like a cursed star. Obadel saw it. He picked it up slowly. Where did you get this? He asked. Ebele lied again. A girl at the market. It's nothing. Obadel nodded, but his eyes narrowed. He knew city gold when he saw it. He placed the bracelet on the altar of the shrine and whispered to the gods. That night, he dreamt of a burning house and a girl screaming inside. When he woke, he tightened the shrine doors, but it was too late. Zuberi changed. He began calling more, demanding more, asking questions. Where are you? Who are you with? Why didn't you answer? Ebele's heart no longer fluttered when she saw his name. It sank. Nynsia warned her. You like the gifts, but you can't handle the giver. He's just protective, Ebele said. But the gods of Nambala had long taught, any love that feels like fear is a curse in disguise. One night, when Ebele tried to leave the club early, Zuberi grabbed her wrist, tight enough to bruise. His voice was calm, but his eyes were fire. Don't make me remind you who you belong to. Ebele went silent. Back home, she wore long sleeves for the first time, but her mother noticed the stiffness in her steps, the way she jumped when the goat cried, the way she avoided mirrors. Ebele, she said gently, you are hiding more than your arms. But Ebele said nothing. She couldn't, because fear, once swallowed, silences even the strongest songs. Grace was Ebele's oldest friend. They had bathed in the same river, climbed the same trees, sang the same songs. But lately, Grace noticed the distance. Ebele no longer came to evening prayers. She no longer laughed the same. Her eyes darted too much. Her smiles came too late. One afternoon, Grace waited behind after class and followed her. She saw the motorbike. She saw the red dress. She saw the club entrance swallow her like a beast. Grace gasped. Her world cracked. The next day, she confronted her. I saw you. Ebele froze. You saw wrong. No, I saw you, but not the you I know. Ebele's throat closed. Are you in danger? Grace whispered. Is someone hurting you? Ebele hesitated. Then she shook her head. I'm fine. But she wasn't, and Grace knew it. Mrs. Amara, Ebele's mother, was not loud like her husband, nor commanding like the elders. But her silence was sharper than a knife, and her eyes saw what others ignored. She saw the way Ebele's fingers fumbled during prayers. She noticed how the white of her wrapper no longer glowed as before. And most of all, she saw the mark on her daughter's wrist. What happened here? She asked one evening as they prepared yam. Ebele looked away. I burned it with the iron. Her mother frowned. We haven't used the iron in weeks. Ebele's hands shook slightly. I used Grace's. Mrs. Amara paused, wiped her hands, then placed one gently on Ebele's. The gods gave us fire, Ebele, but they warned us never to feed it lies. Ebele's heart pounded, but she said nothing. At the next village festival, the talking drummer played an odd rhythm. The elders listened closely, heads tilted. Daughter of light, the drum said. You walk in shadow. The people murmured. Who was the message for? Ebele stood at the edge of the crowd, her breath frozen. Nynsia stood beside her, dressed in crimson. Scared? She asked. Ebele didn't reply. They're not talking to you. You're safe with me. But Ebele no longer believed that. Ebele went to the river to cleanse herself. She whispered apologies to the water, dropped kola nuts, and tried to sing the sacred hymn. But the river rejected her offering. The kola nuts didn't sink. They floated. Obadel saw the signs. He spoke to the elders. The spirits are angry. One of our own has broken the covenant. They searched the village, but no one looked at Ebele, because surely the daughter of light would never betray them. Zuberi became bolder. He came to the village once, waited near the forest, sent a note through a boy. Come now, or I come in. Ebele slipped out in the night, trembling. You belong to me, he said. I don't, she replied. His face darkened. He reached into his coat and pulled out a gold bracelet. Then prove it. Wear this. If you remove it, I'll know. Her hand shook as she wore it. The weight was heavy, not just in gold, but in fear. That night, Ebele had a vision. An old woman with white eyes stood over her. Child of Nambala, your feet are coated in ash. You walk away from the path, and the ancestors weep. I'm sorry, Ebele cried. I didn't mean to. Then turn back. I can't. I don't know how. The woman leaned in. He who gave you gifts has already begun to take. Ebele woke up screaming. Grace tried again, cornered her after morning chores. Tell me what's happening, please. Ebele looked down. You don't understand. Make me. Ebele bit her lip. I liked the gifts, the attention, the feeling. Grace's eyes filled with tears. And now? Now I'm drowning. Grace hugged her. Let me help. But Ebele shook her head. It's too late. Obadel, during deep meditation, saw a vision. Ebele in red, Ebele dancing, Ebele chained. He rose in sweat, knew it was her, knew she had broken the path. But he said nothing. Instead, he carved a small wooden mask, painted half white, half black, and placed it at the river. Let the spirits guide her now. I have done all I can. One night, Ebele didn't answer Zuberi's calls. He came, parked by the village edge. When she entered the car, he didn't speak at first. Then he gripped her chin. Don't test me again. He handed her another gift, a necklace. Wear it with the bracelet. Together, they mean you're mine. Ebele nodded, but her eyes screamed. The village prepared for the annual Feast of Ancestors. Ebele tried to avoid it, but her mother insisted. You will walk with us. The gods must see your face. As she entered the shrine, the carved mask Obadel had left shuddered on the altar. Fell, cracked. The elders gasped. A soul is split, one of them whispered. A storm is coming. That night, Ebele stood before her mirror again. But this time, she didn't see anyone. No priest's daughter, no girl in red, just emptiness. She touched the bracelet, the necklace, her lips. Then, with trembling hands, she picked up a stone and smashed the mirror. It shattered into 100 pieces. Like her, like the life she once knew. After the mirror broke, something shifted in the air around Nambala. Even the animals felt it. Goats refused to eat, roosters crowed at odd hours, and the village children cried more than usual. The elders gathered under the Iroko tree, troubled. Obadel was silent through most of the meeting, but finally he spoke. There is a child among us, carrying darkness, and it is not hers to carry. The others nodded, uneasy. Meanwhile, Ebele buried the shattered mirror behind her hut, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She felt the winds watching her, the trees listening. Even her own shadow seemed thinner now, more fragile. She tried to sleep, but nightmares came instead. Dreams of drowning in red rivers, of laughing masks, of Zuberi's voice whispering, "You're mine forever." Nincia came to her in the early hours of morning. She didn't knock, just stood by Ebele's door, cloaked in silence. I'm leaving, she said. Ebele blinked. Leaving? The city calls again. I've done what I came to do. You came to break me, Ebele whispered. Nincia smiled faintly. No, I came to show you who you are. And what am I? Dangerous, she said, when you stop pretending. Then she left, just like that, like a breeze that had stirred a forest, and vanished. For the first time since her fall, Ebele sat with her mother beneath the guava tree. They didn't speak for a long while. Finally, Ebele whispered, Mama, have you ever been afraid of yourself? Her mother looked at her sharply, then softly. Yes, once, when I was your age. What did you do? I listened to the wind, and it told me, you are not what they expect. You are what you choose. Tears welled in Ebele's eyes, but before she could confess, her phone buzzed. A message. Zuberi, come out, now, or I come in. She stood. I need to fetch cassava. Her mother said nothing, but her eyes, those ancient knowing eyes, watched her go. Ebele entered Zuberi's car, her body stiff, her face blank. He smiled at her, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've been quiet. She nodded. He handed her another box. Inside, earrings, golden, heavy. You know what to do. She wore them. Her hands moved like a puppet's. Say it, he said. I belong to you, she murmured, louder. I belong to you. Her voice broke, and somewhere deep within her a thread finally snapped. That night, as she walked home, the forest spoke, not with words, but with memories. She saw herself as a child, running through leaves, singing the river song. She saw her father blessing newborns. She saw her mother dancing with ash on her face during the old cleansing ritual. And then, she saw herself in red silk, chained, her eyes empty. The trees groaned. Return, the wind whispered, before you become what you fear. Ebele dreamt of fire. A hut burned, her father's. Smoke swallowed the skies, and Zuberi laughed in the flames. She ran toward the hut, screaming. Inside, she saw a little girl clutching the wooden mask Obadel had carved. Her face was wet with tears. Ebele tried to grab her, but the girl dissolved into ash. She woke up gasping, and outside, the sky had turned blood orange. A storm was coming. Grace returned. She had gone to the city to find out who Zuberi really was, and what she discovered made her tremble. He wasn't just a playboy. He was a trafficker, a man known to disappear girls, a man the city whispered about but feared too much to touch. She brought photos, evidence, names. She confronted Abel behind the school wall. He's not just dangerous, he's death. Ebele stared in horror. He said he loved me. He loves power, and he hates freedom. Ebele sank to her knees. I don't know how to leave. Grace took her hand. Then I'll help you. We'll burn his chains together. That night, Ebele went to the shrine. For the first time in months. She entered barefoot, in white, with no makeup, no jewelry, no lies. Obadel saw her. His eyes welled with tears. She knelt. I am broken, Baba. Then let the ancestors make you whole. Together, they lit 7 candles. Ebele prayed, truly prayed, and the mask on the altar glowed. The spirits had heard her, but redemption has a cost. Zuberi came to the village the next day, angry, smiling, deadly. He parked at the river's edge, waiting. Word spread. Grace warned Ebele. Obadel told the elders, but Ebele chose to go alone. He cursed me. I must break it with my own voice. She walked toward him with the wind behind her. The river watched. So did the trees. And the mask began to crackle. Zuberi stepped out of the car. So, you finally remember who you belong to? Ebele removed the bracelet, the necklace, the earrings, dropped them into the dust. I belong to myself. He lunged. But before he could touch her, the winds roared. The sky split. A lightning bolt struck the ground between them. Zuberi screamed and fell back. The village came running. Ebele stood tall. Her chains shattered. But the storm wasn't over yet. The lightning didn't just strike the ground. It struck Zuberi's car. Fire erupted from its hood. Villagers screamed and scattered. But Ebele stood still, face illuminated by the blaze. Zuberi crawled backward, covered in dust, screaming curses. His charm had shattered. The spirits had broken his mask. Obadel arrived with the elders. Behind them, Grace, Mrs. Amara, and a crowd of villagers holding lanterns. Zuberi looked around. He had no more shadows to hide in. And then he fled into the forest, never to be seen again. The spirits of Nambala had judged him, and their judgment was final. The shrine was opened for the first public cleansing in 10 years. Ebele was bathed in river water, wrapped in white, and made to walk barefoot across sacred soil. Obadel led the chant, but her voice joined his, steady and strong. At the end, the elders placed the half-cracked mask on her chest. You have walked through fire, they said. Now rise with ash behind you. Ebele rose, not as a priest's daughter, but as herself. Not everyone rejoiced. Some villagers whispered that Ebele had brought shame, that she was no longer pure, that the spirits had warned and she ignored them. But others defended her, called her brave, said she faced a python and survived. Obadel spoke at the center square. Let no man curse what the gods have forgiven. And the elders echoed, so let it be. Ebele gathered all of Zuberi's gifts, the scarf, the perfume, the golden earrings, the cracked bracelet. She placed them in a basket and walked to the river. One by one, she tossed them in. "Take back your curses," she whispered. The river accepted them and washed them far, far away. Weeks passed. One day, a letter arrived. No name, just words. "I never expected you to fight back. I underestimated the village girl in white. But we will meet again, and next time, I won't miss." Zuberi wasn't gone, not completely. But Ebele no longer shook at his name. Let him come. She was ready. Grace came to visit with red eyes. "I need to confess something," she said. "When you first started changing, I was jealous. You looked free. I looked small." Ebele held her hand. "We both got lost in different ways." And they cried, together. A sacred rite was performed, one that hadn't been done in generations. Ebele was taken to the old circle of stones, blindfolded and wrapped in red cloth. Red, not for shame, but for transformation. The priestess poured river mud on her forehead. "You died in silence, now live in truth." The village watched. The mask burned in a fire bowl, and the ashes rose. Ensia came back, no longer in gold, no longer loud. She walked into the market with sandals worn thin and eyes that had seen too much. "He found me," she told Ebele. "Did he hurt you?" "He tried, but I left with his secrets." They embraced. No anger, no blame, only sisters reborn. Zuberi's deeds reached the council in the city. A tribunal was formed. Ebele was called to testify. She stood before strangers in suits and told her story, not with shame, but with fire. And when she was done, the judges bowed their heads. "We believe you," they said. Zuberi was wanted. A bounty was placed. Justice was moving. One morning, Obadel told Ebele, "It's time I rest." He stepped down as village priest and handed her the carved staff. "You were born into this, but now you choose it." Ebele stood frozen. Could she carry the same weight that once broke her? She looked at the staff, then lifted it. Yes, she could. The shrine was silent, but the gods weren't. They spoke through wind, through herbs, through dream. Ebele saw visions, a woman with many voices, a girl in chains, a boy dancing in fire. She wrote them all in a journal. The spirits had more work for her. For the first time in many moons, Ebele sang, not at a club, not for seduction, but at the river, a prayer song. The waters danced. Even the birds stopped to listen. She was whole, and the river knew her name again. At the next fire festival, Ebele lit the first torch. Children gathered around her. She told them the tale of a girl who wore a mask, and finally took it off. They clapped, they cheered. And when she danced, the whole village followed. Even the skeptical smiled. Ebele returned to the city, not as prey, but as storm. She visited the place where she first met Zuberi. The club was gone, closed, empty. She left a white bead at the entrance. For every girl who came here and never came back. Chapter 45. The daughter becomes the mother years past. Ebele married a quiet man who worked with herbs. They had a daughter, and when that daughter turned 6, she asked, "Mama, were you always this strong?" Ebele smiled. "No, child. I was once broken, and then I chose to heal." Bards began singing her story. Children carved dolls of the girl in red who fought the python. Ebele didn't stop them. She only corrected one thing. It wasn't a python I fought. It was a mirror. Obadel passed away quietly, wrapped in white with a smile on his face. Before he died, he gave Abel a final gift, a new mask, half white, half red. "Because you are both," he said, "light and fire." She hung it in the shrine. A man was captured at the border. Fake passport, gold in his bag, and a charm with the name Ele etched on it. They sent for Ebele. She saw his face. It was Zuberi, but older, smaller. "You can kill me," he said. "I won't," she replied. "You already killed yourself." And she walked away. On the day of her shrine dedication, Ebele walked alone to the river. She knelt. "Thank you for not letting me drown." The river bubbled. A fish jumped. A breeze kissed her cheek. Forgiveness had found her. Years later, children asked, "What became of the girl called Ebele?" They say she became the first priestess of her kind. A woman who feared nothing, wore no mask, and danced even when the skies cried. And in the hills of Nambala, they still whisper her name. Ebele. the fire that returned to water.